Asynchronous work, you've probably heard of it being thrown around the team productivity space for some time, but what is it? It's perfect not only for team leaders, but individual contributors alike. And simply put, asynchronous communication is when you send a message without expecting an immediate response. So for example, you could send an email, I open it and respond to the email several hours later. Now below there's a fantastic article that goes into much more depth if you want to read it later. But let's kick off with some of the differences between real-time communication and asynchronous communication. So it's very different the way that it works, and this explains it pretty well. Let's explore some of these core differences. Let's start with what real-time communication's like. It typically requires team members to be present simultaneously in either meetings or video calls, or even responding to work chat or emails. And everyone is tied to more or less the same schedule as they go across their work days. And naturally, it's prioritized around the speed of collaboration. Asynchronous communication happens in writing or pre-recorded video with team members. Catching up focus is the focus of it, responding on their own time. And everyone in that works when they works best for them. So you can really design it around when your day is most suitable to be responding to stuff. And it prioritizes focus and flexibility. Now you're probably wondering, okay, I know the differences between them, but what is the real problem with real-time communication? Well, let's look at a few different interactions you have with real-time communication across a workday. And the first of those is email. We typically spend an average of 6 hours a day on email. And this is mainly due to the fact that we prioritize the speed of collaboration in responding as quickly as we humanly can. The same goes to meetings. In meetings, since the pandemic forced a lot of companies to go remote, meetings ballooned by 253%. So meetings are much more common and they typically must be attended, which is something that is naturally part of the real-time communication element. And finally, instant messaging applications. The average Slack user sends on average 200 messages a day, which is pretty high and something I didn't expect it to be that high. And the power user can send 1,000, and not being as common, but definitely not the exception. It's very interesting to see instant messaging being used so aggressively to prioritize the speed of communication. So what are some of the benefits to actually introducing something like asynchronous communication? Well, let's go through a few of them. It gives you more control over your workday, leading to happier and more productive employees. A Wall Street Journal survey actually showed that workers wanted more flexible hours, even more than they wanted remote work. So this is something that asynchronous work basically is designed for, is to be much more flexible on when to respond and where to respond as well. Asynchronous endorses higher quality communication. The communication is naturally slower, it is admittedly slower, but it also tends to be higher quality because your flexibility and focus is much more induced into that interaction that you have. A lot better planning typically happens. It leads to less stress. When people learn to plan their workloads and collaborations more carefully, it gives them time for their co-workers to see and respond to their requests, and it improves that interaction and natural communication. Deep work is also a factor here. It is much more prevalent in asynchronous communication because instead of reacting instantly and context switching, you're actually focusing maybe 1 to 3 times a day on batching your communication, whether that's on messages or those sort of emails that pop in. It's naturally designed around you versus instantly responding. And it also gives documentation greater transparency, and it becomes more automatic in terms of writing up about key discussions and information, making sure they're documented versus constantly needing to communicate. Time zones also benefit from this, and naturally it puts in-office people and remote employees on the same footings, which is definitely useful. But of course, you do need that real-time communication and asynchronous communication. A great worked example for meetings. Twisters dramatically reduce the amount of meetings that they have around synchronous communication. 70% of all of the communication is asynchronously done through Twist, GitHub, Google Docs, Figma, and Todoist, 25% of it, of their day, is synchronous communication, so Zoom, Around, or Google Meet, and 5% is actually in-person meetups like annual company and smaller team retreats. So there's a lot of benefit to it. Now you can check out the full article for some amazing insights and check out the asynchronous newsletter for much more in the world of communication and collaboration. A really interesting space at the moment, but hopefully we gave you a great guide to dive into the differences between real-time communication and asynchronous communication. Thank you very much, folks.